20 black celebrities who lost everything during California wildfires. They built empires, broke barriers, and inspired generations, but when the flames came, not even greatness could save what they'd built. From Grammy winners to Olympic legends, these 20 black celebrities lost everything in the California wildfires. Homes burned to the ground. Memories turned to ash. And the world barely noticed. This isn't just about fame, it's about resilience, loss, and the quiet power of rebuilding. Fire. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, have you ever faced a disaster that changed your life forever? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell. This is Legends of Black Excellence. Tyra Banks. When Tyra Banks opened up about losing her home in the Los Angeles wildfires, it wasn't on American soil, it was during an emotional interview on Australian television. The supermodel and media mogul, long known for her poise and polished public image, shared the heartbreaking news in a subdued tone. At the time of the disaster, Tyra was in Australia with her partner, Lou Belong Martin, attending a friend's gathering. Amid the celebration, her phone kept buzzing with alerts from back home. Slowly, the truth set in: her residence, the one place that offered her peace and privacy, had been consumed by fire. For someone who spent decades in the public eye, transforming from runway icon to television executive, Tyra chose silence in the face of tragedy, not wanting to draw attention to her loss while so many others were suffering. She admitted that she and her partner later broke down in tears upon returning to see what little remained. While some sentimental items had been spared because they were overseas or stored in New York, the emotional weight of knowing her sanctuary no longer stood was immeasurable. Banks' story underscores how deeply personal these wildfires have become, even for those who seem untouchable. She didn't share dramatic footage or mourn with hashtags. Instead, she spoke quietly, with grace, offering a glimpse into the vulnerability of someone we often associate with strength and success. The destruction of her home was not just a material loss, it represented the erasure of memories, comfort, and stability. Tyra's decision to grieve privately, and her eventual choice to speak out, is a reminder that tragedy doesn't discriminate. Whether you're a household name or a regular neighbor, fire leaves the same scars. Her experience, though deeply individual, reflects a shared pain across California. In voicing her loss, Tyra gave permission for others to acknowledge theirs, not with spectacle, but with honesty. Bozoma St. John. Bozoma St. John, a powerhouse in global marketing and branding, faced one of the most deeply personal losses of her life while on another continent. As fires raged across California, Bozoma was in Zambia, far removed from the Malibu home she had worked decades to attain. News of the fire didn't come from a call, it came from Twitter. One image, one horrifying update, and suddenly everything she'd built for herself and her daughter was gone. For Bozoma, her home wasn't just a place, it was a testament to perseverance, a coastal haven she had poured her heart into after years of relentless effort in boardrooms and branding campaigns. More than a house, it was a revolving door of community and connection, outfitted with a keypad entry so loved ones could visit freely. It was comfort, legacy, and sanctuary. To see it reduced to ashes while thousands of miles away was devastating. Her daughter, only 15, was also deeply affected. Having watched friends lose their homes in the same fire, she too was pulled into the collective grief that engulfed their neighborhood. The shared loss became a quiet burden, one they carried across continents. On social media, Bozoma reflected on what the house had meant to her, a symbol of healing after personal upheaval, a place where she could finally exhale. Yet, in true Bozoma fashion, she turned pain into purpose. She spoke openly, not to elicit sympathy, but to highlight the fragility of our structures, both physical and emotional. She didn't dwell on blame or politics. Instead, she honored the resilience of her neighbors and praised the firefighters risking everything to save what they could. For someone who built her career on controlling narratives, this moment was different. She allowed the rawness of real life to break through the brand polish. Her story became not about loss alone, but about memory, gratitude, and a mother's instinct to keep moving forward for the sake of her child. The fire took her house, but not her spirit, and certainly not her voice. Madlib, Otis Lee Jackson Jr. For legendary hip-hop producer Madlib, the flames didn't just devour drywall and furniture, they consumed an irreplaceable archive of music history. Known for his unmatched sampling skills and genre-bending beats, Madlib, born Otis Lee Jackson Jr., spent more than 3 decades assembling a record collection that spanned continents, eras, and cultures. Thousands of vinyls, rare cassettes, and analog gems, gone in a matter of hours. His home, tucked away in California, had doubled as a sonic sanctuary. It was there he crafted collaborations with the likes of MF Doom, Freddie Gibbs, and Kanye West. It was also where he kept pieces of music's past, Japanese jazz pressings, Afrobeat originals, obscure soul EPs. This wasn't just a personal stash, it was a living museum of sound. The fire that tore through his neighborhood didn't just destroy a residence. It severed a connection to heritage, artistry, and identity. What hurt most wasn't just the flames, it was the silence that followed. For an artist whose work thrives on fragments of forgotten sound, the idea of those voices being permanently silenced was unbearable. In a rare public statement, Madlib acknowledged the emotional weight of the loss. Fans and fellow artists responded immediately, with Flying Lotus and Freddie Gibbs launching an online fundraiser to help him and his family rebuild. Yet for someone as private as Madlib, who often lets the music speak louder than words, this loss was deeper than headlines could convey. The burned records represented not only decades of collecting, but also his method, his ritual. Flipping through dusty crates, pulling obscure loops, those moments were irreplaceable. Even so, he remains rooted in purpose. Friends say he's already begun piecing together what can be salvaged, mentally and emotionally. His resilience is not born of denial but of deep creative fire, the kind no wildfire can truly extinguish. The home may be gone, but the music, it will find its way back. Jhené Aiko. For Jhené Aiko, the wildfires didn't just destroy property, they disrupted the quiet balance she fought to protect for her family. The singer-songwriter, known for her deeply introspective music and spiritual grace, faced a devastating blow when flames overtook her California residence. Her voice, often associated with calm, healing, and emotional rawness, took on a different tone when she shared the news. Her home was burned to the ground with all of our things inside. At the time, Aiko was safe with her 2 children, 2-year-old son Noah and teenage daughter Namiko. While she expressed deep gratitude for their safety, her words also carried the heavy grief of someone who had lost more than bricks and belongings. The house had been a place of rebirth for her, a space carefully curated to nurture peace after past chapters filled with heartbreak and loss. Now, all of that was reduced to embers. Aiko took to Instagram not to vent, but to reflect. Her message wasn't dramatic, it was poetic, almost prayerful. "Let suffering be a gift," she wrote, a lesson in compassion. Even in devastation, she sought meaning. Her post was a meditation on impermanence, acknowledging that everything physical can be taken in a heartbeat, and what remains is what truly matters: love, survival, and the opportunity to begin again. Known for weaving vulnerability into her lyrics, Aiko's response to the fire mirrored the emotional honesty of her music. She didn't blame or rage. Instead, she offered a philosophical lens that invited her followers to reflect along with her. The pain was real, but so was the strength underneath it. In the wake of the fire, Jhené focused not on what she had lost, but on the blank canvas ahead. "Uncertainty is an opportunity to create," she concluded. With those words, she reframed her own narrative, not as a victim of disaster, but as an artist reborn through it. For her fans, the message was powerful: from ashes, a new harmony can rise. Tina Knowles. For Tina Knowles, the recent California wildfires claimed more than just a coastal bungalow, they claimed the physical embodiment of peace. The mother of music icons Beyoncé and Solange, Tina had long cherished her Malibu retreat as a sacred escape. It wasn't just a residence, it was her happy place, a space for reflection, serenity, and solitude after decades spent guiding careers and navigating fame. When the Palisades fire broke out in early January, it tore through more than 17,000 acres, leaving destruction in its path. Among the homes lost was Tina's beloved beachside getaway. She had recently celebrated her 71st birthday there, posting joyful videos of dolphins leaping through the waves and expressing gratitude for the life she had built. Days later, that same stretch of coastline would be unrecognizable. Tina shared the heartbreaking news on Instagram. Her tone wasn't bitter, it was resolute. She extended heartfelt appreciation to firefighters battling the flames, acknowledging their bravery even as she processed the personal weight of her own loss. She didn't isolate her grief, instead, she aligned herself with every other family grieving similar devastation. What made the loss especially poignant was its timing. At a point in life when many look to simplify, preserve, and protect the spaces that matter most, Tina had her sanctuary stripped away. Still, she emphasized the resilience of her spirit. "We will recover," she said, more affirmation than hope. As a matriarch and cultural figure, Tina Knowles has often been a quiet force of support. Her response to the fire reflected that same grace, calm, purposeful, and rooted in community. She used her platform not to spotlight herself, but to shine light on the broader scope of suffering and recovery. Beyoncé's Bay Good Foundation pledged $2.5 million to support families impacted by the wildfires, a gesture that echoes Tina's lifelong commitment to giving back. In losing her home, Tina lost part of her personal history. But in her response, she also showed us how to carry ourselves when everything familiar is taken. With dignity. With strength. And always, with compassion. Vanessa Bryant. For Vanessa Bryant, loss is no stranger. Years after the world mourned alongside her following the death of her husband, Kobe Bryant, and their daughter Gianna, another form of grief arrived, this time from nature's fury. The recent California wildfires didn't just claim structures, they unearthed memories that had been carefully tucked away. Vanessa revealed on Instagram that one of the homes destroyed by the Los Angeles wildfires stood on the very street where she and Kobe first began their lives as a married couple. That house, though no longer her residence, held meaning far beyond its walls. It was the beginning of everything, of family, of legacy, of private moments far from the lights of arenas and red carpets. To lose it in flames was like losing a chapter all over again. The house, for Vanessa, symbolized growth, innocence, and the fragile hope of young love in the public eye. Her message online was brief, but heavy with emotion. She shared her heartbreak for all the victims, not just herself, extending prayers to every family displaced by the fires. In her words, there was no spotlight, just solidarity. And true to the Bryant family spirit, Vanessa did more than speak. Through the Mamba and Mambacita Sports Foundation, she announced a partnership with Baby2Baby, a non-profit providing emergency supplies to families affected by the wildfires. This act of generosity came as no surprise to those who followed her quiet strength over the years. Vanessa has turned unimaginable pain into purpose, and the fire, as cruel as it was, became yet another opportunity to give. Her message resonated across Los Angeles, not because she was a celebrity, but because she was once again someone who had been there, who understood what it meant to lose, and who refused to let others face it alone. LeBron James. LeBron James is used to pressure, on the court, under the lights, with millions watching. But no playoff game could prepare him for the panic of being forced to evacuate his Brentwood mansion as wildfires threatened to overtake Los Angeles neighborhoods. With winds whipping and flames moving fast, LeBron didn't hesitate. He packed up his wife, his 3 children, and his mother, and got them to safety. It was a harrowing night. Speaking to reporters after a Lakers game, LeBron described the situation as off-world, a surreal crisis that didn't care about status or fame. Though their home, valued at over $23 million, was ultimately spared, the emotional toll was undeniable. He admitted that simply knowing his family was safe was more important than any possession left behind. But LeBron's experience wasn't isolated. The Palisades fire had already scorched over 40,000 acres, and others in the Lakers organization, including head coach J.J. Redick, weren't so lucky, losing their homes entirely. LeBron, never one to stay silent during moments of crisis, used his platform to amplify awareness of the devastation. He praised first responders and offered public encouragement to those still in harm's way. More than just a sports icon, LeBron has long positioned himself as a community advocate. From his I Promise school in Ohio to social justice campaigns nationwide, he understands the responsibility that comes with influence. The wildfire evacuation added another layer to his already powerful voice, this time about disaster preparedness, climate urgency, and community resilience. While he and his family took temporary refuge in a hotel, LeBron focused on remaining emotionally present. He shared lighter moments, too, photos of his kids finding calm in unfamiliar settings, making the best of displacement. In doing so, he humanized the ordeal, reminding fans that at the end of the day, he's a father first. And as the smoke cleared, so did his message: it's not about the size of your house, but the safety within it. Kid Cudi. Kid Cudi, the introspective artist known for bringing mental health to the forefront of hip-hop, found himself navigating a new kind of chaos when the California wildfires forced him to flee his Los Angeles home. But what began as a precautionary evacuation quickly turned into something far more unsettling. While he was away seeking safety, an intruder broke into his house, adding invasion to an already traumatic event. According to reports, the unidentified man helped himself to Cudi's kitchen and even took a shower before being apprehended by police. The suspect was shirtless when discovered, caught on security cameras as he wandered through the artist's home. While no one was harmed, the violation felt deeper than a simple burglary. It was a disruption of peace in a moment when stability was already crumbling. Before the break-in, Cudi had posted updates on his Instagram, assuring fans that he, his loved ones, and his dogs were safe. Still, his message carried an undertone of heartbreak. "My heart hurts for those who lost everything," he wrote. That hurt would only deepen after discovering his own sanctuary had been breached. Cudi, born Scott Mescudi, has long used his art to process pain, isolation, and anxiety. This real-world experience felt like something ripped from one of his darker verses, evacuating his home due to a natural disaster, only to return to find it spiritually violated. His silence after the event spoke volumes. No dramatic posts, no angry rants, just a pause. And in that pause, fans felt the weight of what it means to rebuild not just brick and mortar, but a sense of personal safety. The fire didn't consume his home, but it exposed the fragility of comfort. For someone who's helped millions confront their internal storms, this external one served as a sobering reminder: even those who help others heal are not immune to the world's chaos. Cuddy's story is a quiet testament to resilience, not loud, not defiant, just real. Kamala Harris. As the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris is no stranger to high-security threats, but the California wildfires added a more unpredictable layer of danger. Her Brentwood residence, located squarely within the wildfire evacuation zone, became the subject of police action when a suspicious activity report led to the detainment of 2 individuals near her property during a citywide curfew. The incident unfolded just before dawn, when LAPD responded to calls about men dressed in black seen loitering near the vice president's home. With the city already on edge due to rapidly spreading fires, every call mattered. Though the 2 men were ultimately released, no crimes were committed. The scare underscored just how volatile the situation had become in California's fire zones, even for those guarded by multiple layers of federal protection. Harris's home, protected by the U.S. Secret Service, California Highway Patrol, and the LAPD's Dignitary Protection Detail, remained physically unharmed. But the event drew attention to how the wildfires blurred lines between environmental disaster and public safety emergencies. Brentwood, once considered a peaceful stronghold for political and entertainment elites, suddenly felt vulnerable. Kamala didn't issue a public statement on the incident. Instead, her office maintained focus on the broader emergency response. She emphasized the importance of coordinated disaster relief, praised first responders, and quietly monitored the fire's movement through Los Angeles. Her leadership style, steady, composed, deliberate, was evident in how she managed both her personal proximity to danger and her role in addressing its national implications. The incident revealed a unique dimension of the wildfire crisis, how even the second most powerful person in the country wasn't exempt from its reach. It wasn't about wealth or status, it was about geography, vulnerability, and timing. For Harris, the evacuation zone wasn't just on a map. It was on her doorstep. In this moment, Kamala Harris became more than a policymaker. She became a neighbor, a Californian, and a symbol of how nature, when uncontained, doesn't check resumes before it strikes. Lupita Nyong'o. When the wildfires swept through Los Angeles in January 2025, Lupita Nyong'o found herself displaced, not just physically, but emotionally. The Oscar-winning actress, celebrated for her powerful performances and elegant public demeanor, was among many forced to evacuate when flames encroached dangerously close to her home. Though her residence wasn't fully destroyed, it was rendered uninhabitable. And as of late May, she still hadn't been able to return. Lupita opened up about the experience on the Awardist podcast, offering rare vulnerability about how the disaster disrupted both her personal life and her creative momentum. She revealed that the uncertainty surrounding her home's condition had become an ongoing source of stress, casting a long shadow over her usual sense of calm and focus. Her displacement wasn't just logistical, it became emotional fuel for introspection. Lupita explained how the loss of physical space shook her ability to ground herself. During the podcast, she spoke about the ironic parallel between her real-life situation and her role in an upcoming animated film, The Wild Robot, which includes a sequence about a devastating forest fire. Art was imitating life in real time, and the overlap felt almost surreal. Through it all, Lupita maintained her hallmark composure. Instead of despair, she expressed deep appreciation for the friends who took her in during the crisis. "It's humbling," she said, "when you have to rely on others for stability." For someone known for exuding strength on and off screen, this admission of vulnerability revealed a different kind of courage, the kind that shows itself when everything familiar is suddenly out of reach. Though she remained relatively private about the fire's long-term impact, her brief reflections illuminated a reality that's often overlooked: the emotional toll of environmental disasters doesn't end when the flames die out. Lupita's story reminded listeners that even those with fame and fortune aren't immune to the grief of dislocation and uncertainty. In a city that often moves at the speed of ambition, Lupita's grounded response was refreshingly human. She didn't frame herself as a victim. She framed herself as someone living through it, with grace, gratitude, and the hope that eventually, home will feel like home again. Willow Smith. The devastation came quietly, then all at once. In the hills of Malibu, where the Pacific Ocean meets rolling canyons, Willow Smith's $4 million dream home, her first major property purchase, was reduced to little more than rubble. The 24-year-old singer and artist, daughter of Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, has long carved her own identity apart from her famous lineage. That house was a manifestation of that independence, a sleek, architectural sanctuary where she could write, paint, and simply be. But nature had other plans. Aerial footage following the fire showed only fragments of what once was. Charred walls, a scorched sundial, and a weathered Buddha statue were all that remained. The image was haunting, a quiet metaphor for loss and survival. Though Willow had not issued a formal public statement at the time, sources confirmed she had evacuated early and was physically unharmed. But for anyone who follows her deeply reflective social media presence and lyrical themes of introspection and rebirth, the loss speaks volumes. Willow is known for embracing minimalism and spiritual philosophy. But no mantra can fully prepare someone for watching their home vanish in smoke. That house was where she journaled her thoughts, meditated with friends, and recorded experimental music. Its destruction meant more than losing belongings, it meant losing a personal retreat she had worked years to claim. Those who know her say she's responding as she always does, inwardly, quietly, creatively. Friends close to her say she has already started sketching new architectural ideas, early blueprints of what might come next. She's not rebuilding to replace. She's rebuilding to reimagine. What sets Willow apart in this tragedy is not just the gravity of her loss, but the way she's processing it, not with spectacle, but with soulful intention. For a young woman who's consistently chosen depth over headlines, this moment is less about destruction and more about what rises afterward. Because for Willow Smith, the fire wasn't the end of something, it was the start of becoming something else entirely. Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, known for his quiet demeanor and laser-focused gameplay, found himself facing a threat that had nothing to do with basketball. As wildfires engulfed parts of Pacific Palisades, an affluent coastal neighborhood in Los Angeles, Leonard made the immediate and selfless decision to step away from his NBA duties. He temporarily left the Clippers mid-season, not because of injury or rest, but to protect his home and the people inside it. The flames came fast, fueled by dry winds and brittle brush. Leonard's first priority wasn't stats or standings, it was his family. His longtime partner, Kishali Shipley, and their 2 children, Kalia and a younger son, were among thousands forced to evacuate under emergency orders. Kawhi, often perceived as stoic and emotionally distant, showed a different kind of leadership during this moment, one rooted in protection, presence, and fatherhood. Clippers head coach Tyronn Lue fully supported his absence, noting publicly that, "You definitely have to take care of home." And that's exactly what Kawhi did. He packed up his family, monitored news updates in real time, and stayed close until the immediate threat had passed. Leonard's Malibu area property, while not confirmed to be destroyed, sat within the evacuation zone. Whether or not the flames reached his home, the emotional impact was clear. Fires don't just threaten structures, they unsettle a sense of safety. For Kawhi, whose career has been defined by control and composure, the wild unpredictability of nature was a different kind of opponent. He didn't use the moment to broadcast concern or gain sympathy. True to form, he stayed out of the spotlight. But his actions, leaving the court to ensure his loved ones were safe, spoke volumes. And when he returned to the team, he did so not as a player merely resuming his role, but as a man who had faced the fragility of life off the court. In a league where "next game" is the mantra, Kawhi's choice reminded fans and teammates alike, some things can't wait. Some moments, especially the ones that involve family and fire, redefine what it means to show up strong. Camden Jones. For Camden Jones, a promising college football player at Cal, the California wildfires didn't just interrupt a season, they dismantled a decade of memories in a single day. The 21-year-old defensive standout, along with his parents, lost their home in Altadena during the ferocious Eaton fire, which ripped through Southern California with little warning and unstoppable force. The house wasn't a mansion. It wasn't adorned with security gates or celebrity neighbors. It was a modest family home where Camden grew up, learned to throw a football, taped his game day highlights on the wall, and celebrated every small win of adolescence. That house held his childhood, his high school trophies, his jerseys, and the everyday rhythm of life that so often goes unrecognized until it disappears. When the fires grew too close, the Jones family evacuated to his sister's home, watching the news in silence, praying the flames would turn away. But by the time his father and brother-in-law returned to check on the property, the worst had been confirmed, their home was gone. In the days that followed, the Cal football community rallied behind Camden. A team mom started a GoFundMe to help the family recover. Fellow players donated clothing, shoes, and necessities. Coaches offered hotel stays and housing support. What began as a personal tragedy quickly transformed into a testament of team spirit and human kindness. Camden, typically reserved off the field, took the loss with remarkable composure. He spoke of his sadness not just for what was lost, but for what others in his neighborhood endured. "It's a mix of emotions every day," he admitted. "But we're grateful we have each other." While much of the media spotlight focused on celebrity losses, Camden's story served as a reminder that disaster doesn't distinguish between fame and quiet perseverance. For student athletes like him, the road is already hard, balancing academics, training, and future dreams. Now, he's doing all of that while rebuilding life from scratch. Still, he shows up to practice. He studies film. He runs drills. Because resilience isn't always loud. Sometimes, it looks like a young man standing tall in borrowed cleats, refusing to let fire define his story. John Legend. When Wildfires tore through Los Angeles at the beginning of 2025, John Legend didn't just pack a bag, he packed his whole family. The EGOT-winning musician, known as much for his soulful voice as for his calm, collected presence, was forced to evacuate his home along with wife Chrissy Teigen and their 4 young children. The air was thick with smoke, evacuation alerts blared through phones, and helicopters droned overhead. The safe haven he had built for his family, suddenly, no longer felt safe. Legend later described the experience as surreal, an emergency that didn't quite feel real until they were already in a hotel room, surrounded by their kids and pets, trying to explain why home wasn't home anymore. Their Brentwood area house stood in the projected path of an aggressive fire front, one of many that consumed over 40,000 acres across Los Angeles County. But for John, the evacuation wasn't just about physical distance from danger, it was about emotional proximity to fragility. A man deeply rooted in humanitarian work and social advocacy, he used the experience to reflect on the growing toll of climate-related disasters. He shared support for local fire departments, called attention to the communities hardest hit, and, perhaps most powerfully, remained publicly grounded for his children's sake. As someone who crafts music around truth and vulnerability, Legend's voice was measured but meaningful. He didn't seek sympathy. Instead, he emphasized solidarity with neighbors and fellow Californians who had lost far more than temporary access to comfort. And he reminded his audience that, celebrity or not, everyone is vulnerable to nature's shifts. Even after the flames passed, he didn't immediately return to work. He stayed close to his family, reassessing priorities. The evacuation became a pause, a moment to recalibrate not only his schedule, but his spirit. The home may have been spared in the end, but the memory of that night lingers. It added a new layer to his understanding of displacement, and it will likely find its way into his next melody, a quiet anthem for all the things you can't pack when fire is on the horizon. Chrissy Teigen. For Chrissy Teigen, the wildfires weren't just frightening, they were disorienting. As flames crept across Los Angeles, threatening neighborhoods like hers, she was forced to do something no mother wants to do: gather her children, pets, and essential belongings and flee. The model, author, and mother of 4 shared the chaos in real time through her signature platform, Instagram. But for once, the humor and sass gave way to something more raw. In one striking post, Chrissy shared a photo of herself crying in her closet, surrounded by clothes and memories, trying to decide what to leave behind. It was an image many women related to: overwhelmed, scared, responsible. "It felt surreal and scary," she wrote. She wasn't exaggerating. That night, with ash in the air and fire maps lighting up red, Chrissy and husband John Legend checked their kids, Luna, Miles, Esty, and Ren, into a hotel, hoping they wouldn't be gone too long. True to her nature, Chrissy didn't stay somber for long. Within 24 hours, she was posting videos of their pets climbing over furniture in their temporary quarters and joking about trying to keep her Lego sets intact. But under the humor was tension. The house, their rhythm, their everyday life, it had all been suspended. And not knowing whether they would return to rubble or routine was emotionally draining. Though their property was ultimately spared, Chrissy never downplayed the privilege of their outcome. She consistently used her platform to highlight the less fortunate. She reposted donation links, shouted out grassroots aid efforts, and urged followers to support local families who had truly lost everything. For Chrissy, the fire underscored something she's often spoken about: control is an illusion. Motherhood, fame, wellness routines, all can be upended in minutes. But it also reinforced something else: resilience isn't about being unshaken. It's about feeling the fear and showing up anyway. That night, as she cried on the floor and laughed in the hallway, Chrissy gave the world something it didn't expect: a glimpse of the vulnerability behind the viral. And in doing so, she reminded us that even in uncertainty, presence is its own kind of power. Keisha Cole. For Keisha Cole, the aftermath of the wildfires was revealed not through press conferences or public statements, but in a single heartbreaking image. Shared by her longtime friend and celebrity hairstylist Jonathan Wright, the photo showed the smoldering ruins of her Los Angeles home. There was no dramatic caption. Just raw honesty and a quiet plea for prayers. At first, Cole hadn't planned to make the loss public. A deeply personal artist with a long history of expressing vulnerability through music, she preferred to process the devastation in silence. But Wright's post changed that. The moment the news broke, fans flooded her social media with support. For many, this wasn't just another celebrity fire story, it was a glimpse into the fragility of someone whose voice had once carried them through their own heartbreaks. Cole had only recently returned from Miami before the fires began. Within days, her world was upended. The house she once called home, where she had raised her children and hosted friends, was gone. Photos, letters, instruments, and the space where she'd often recorded demos, all destroyed in the blaze. What struck people most wasn't just the loss, but how little Cole said about it. She didn't center herself in the tragedy. Instead, she allowed others, friends, followers, and community members, to fill the silence with empathy. That choice, quiet and graceful, mirrored her artistic style, emotional, unfiltered, and always deeply real. Her fans, many of whom grew up with her music as a soundtrack to their own pain and healing, responded in kind. They organized donation drives, shared memories tied to her albums, and offered words of resilience. In a landscape often defined by performative grief, Cole's quiet strength was a masterclass in authenticity. Keisha Cole's music has always been about more than just heartbreak, it's been about survival. And now, as she rebuilds not just walls but a life interrupted by fire, her journey echoes the same themes that have defined her artistry for 2 decades: loss, love, and the courage to keep singing through the smoke. Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle, a Hollywood veteran revered for his versatility on screen, faced a real-life challenge that no script could prepare him for. As the wildfires closed in on his Los Angeles neighborhood, he and his family were forced to evacuate, not once, but multiple times. It wasn't just a brief disruption, it was a prolonged, emotionally exhausting ordeal. Appearing on Jimmy Kimmel Live, Cheadle recounted how close the fires came to their home, just 5 or 6 blocks away. The proximity was terrifying. They packed up essentials, checked into a hotel, only to be asked to leave again when the hotel itself became part of the evacuation zone. Eventually, they found shelter at a friend's house, squeezing into a kid's bedroom while keeping tabs on the fire maps every hour. Don didn't share dramatic footage or tearful breakdowns. Instead, he calmly acknowledged the instability so many California residents now endure regularly. For a man whose characters often exude intelligence and control, this episode was a humbling reminder: nature doesn't care how composed you are. The stress, uncertainty, and lack of permanence were emotionally draining, and Cheadle made no effort to downplay it. Checking on his home days later, he found the electricity restored, but the scars of displacement remained. In interviews, he emphasized the need for climate adaptation, urban planning, and better emergency infrastructure, not just for affluent neighborhoods, but for vulnerable communities who face these fires without insurance, support, or shelter. His story wasn't about the house. It was about the ripple effect, the way a fire miles away can suddenly leave you without roots, routine, or rest. And in sharing that story, Don Cheadle once again proved that his most powerful performances don't always happen on a screen. John Clayton. John Clayton, the legendary jazz bassist and composer, was in New York accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award when he got the call. First, it was his daughter. Her home had been consumed by the Altadena fire. Minutes later, a neighbor confirmed the unthinkable: his own home was gone too. It wasn't just a house. It was a sanctuary filled with decades of irreplaceable music. A gifted instrument from jazz great Ray Brown, original manuscripts, recording equipment, and rare vinyls, items that couldn't be downloaded or duplicated, were all lost in the flames. A lifetime's worth of creativity, archived and nurtured in one place, reduced to ash in a matter of hours. Clayton's grief ran deeper than property. He had built that home not just for comfort, but as a creative lab. Over the years, it hosted young musicians, recording sessions, and late-night improvisations. For jazz, a genre built on preservation and reinvention, the loss of his home felt like the silent disappearance of an oral history. Still, the jazz community responded in full force. Fellow musicians like Jeff Hamilton launched fundraisers. Music Foundation stepped up to help replace lost equipment. Fans offered heartfelt tributes, recognizing that Clayton had not only elevated jazz, but passed it on to new generations. Clayton's response was reflective, not reactive. He spoke less about material loss and more about what it meant to start over as a creator. "I can write new charts," he said. But the energy in that space, that can't be rebuilt. His humility was staggering. He didn't ask for sympathy, only support for others affected by the fires. In an era where art often lives in the cloud, Clayton's story was a reminder of music's tangible roots, written notes, bowed strings, and lived-in spaces. The fire didn't just destroy a house. It erased a living archive of American jazz. Beyoncé. Beyoncé, one of the most influential entertainers of the 21st century, faced a stark reminder of vulnerability when she and husband Jay-Z were forced to evacuate their $200 million estate in Malibu's Paradise Cove. The palatial property, among the most expensive private residences in California, found itself in the path of a rapidly advancing firestorm. Though the couple remained publicly silent in the immediate aftermath, their actions spoke volumes. Beyoncé's philanthropic arm, Baygood Foundation, quickly mobilized resources, pledging support to wildfire victims and frontline workers. It wasn't their first time doing so, but this was different. This time, the crisis had reached their own doorstep. Despite the home's architectural resilience and high-tech protection systems, evacuation orders were issued. The area had already lost thousands of acres, and firefighting crews were stretched thin. Photos surfaced of security personnel covering outdoor sculptures and prepping emergency routes, signaling the seriousness of the threat. For Beyoncé, the evacuation held layered meaning. As a woman deeply connected to themes of legacy, motherhood, and Black excellence, the idea of losing a home built from hard-earned generational wealth was heavy. It wasn't just a symbol of success, it was a symbol of how even the highest towers aren't immune to nature's rage. Insiders reported that while the couple relocated temporarily, Beyoncé remained active behind the scenes, coordinating relief efforts, offering grants through Baygood, and sending supplies to neighboring communities. For her, giving wasn't reactionary, it was responsibility. She didn't frame the incident as a personal tragedy. Instead, she widened the lens. Her silence became strategy, allowing the focus to remain on those who lost everything without the means to rebuild. In a world where fame often demands center stage, Beyoncé once again let grace lead. Anthony Obi, Fat Tony. For Houston rapper Fat Tony, whose real name is Anthony Obi, the California wildfires didn't just threaten his house, they obliterated his entire street. Living in Altadena for just over a year, Obi had grown close to his neighbors, often sharing beats, barbecue, and stories from the underground music scene. On January 7th, everything changed. The next morning, he awoke to the unimaginable, block after block reduced to soot. His home, studio space, and years of creative work, gone. In interviews, he confessed the emotional impact wasn't immediate. "It didn't hit me until I realized I had nowhere to go," he said. "It wasn't just my house. It was my hard drive. My writing notebooks. My archives." For an independent artist, the loss wasn't just physical. It was professional. Fat Tony had built a career on raw, unfiltered storytelling rooted in place. That house was his creative lab. It held unreleased material, collaborations, and footage tied to upcoming projects. When it burned, so did a year's worth of progress. What made his story particularly painful was the anonymity of it. Unlike celebrities with national platforms, Fat Tony's loss didn't make headlines. But within his community, the impact was profound. Fellow musicians started relief campaigns. Fans bought merch in droves to support him. And local venues offered performance slots to help him rebuild. Yet Obi didn't spiral. Instead, he spoke about gratitude, thankful no one on his block was physically harmed, thankful for the support, and thankful for perspective. "I came here to grow," he said. "And maybe that growth means starting from scratch." His voice became one of grounded resilience, echoing through independent music circles. He reminded people that creativity can survive disaster. That rebuilding isn't just about replacing walls, it's about rewriting the verse, reworking the hook, and finding rhythm in the rubble. These stories are more than celebrity headlines, they're human moments of vulnerability, strength, and survival. From platinum-selling artists to everyday athletes, the California wildfires proved that no amount of fame can protect you from nature's fury. Yet each voice here carries a legacy that refuses to be silenced by flames. As we rebuild and reflect, one question remains: should celebrities be expected to use their platforms during personal tragedies, or do we ask too much of them when they're hurting too? Let us know what you think in the comments, only on Legends of Black Excellence.